guys, so here's part 2 of my wrist series of my yoga videos. In this part we're going to talk about bone stacking. And if you're a big science or math person, this is going to make a ton of sense to you. I know it did for me. And if you're not, just bear with me because it will make sense, I promise. So one of the ways that we can make our bodies the strongest, especially when it comes to our arms, is by making sure that in whatever pose we're doing, that we're stacking the bones and we're aligning them in a way that's going to be the most supportive. So for instance, when we're in plank and when we're in handstand as well, we want to make sure that the wrist is right underneath of the shoulder, which is right underneath the elbow, which is right underneath of the shoulder. Now, if you have hyperextended elbows and your elbow kind of comes out, it's very difficult, but you need to bring it back in line with the shoulder and the wrist. That'll make your arms stronger. In addition to that, what tends to happen, especially with women, I'm not exactly sure why, but they get the fact that this needs to be in a straight line, but then they move their hands out too wide, especially when they do down dog, planks, and handstand. And what that makes it is, even though it's sort of stacked, it's coming out in a way that's putting all the pressure straight down into the wrist. Whereas if we bring everything in line, we kind of have gravity pushing on our shoulder and pushing on our upper body. So gravity's doing the work and we're just strong and supported. So for plank, straight line. For headstand, we want to have the elbow right over top of the wrist and the shoulder is in line with the elbow. So we're at, everything's stacked, everything's in line, nice angles. Same thing for crow pose. In crow pose, when we do it, elbow over the wrist, and eventually can straighten the arm. So when we start out, the shoulder is in line with the elbow as well, and that's going to give us the most balance and support because everything's stacked. In down dog too, obviously it's not going to be stacked up and down like a straight line because we're at a slant, but we want to make sure that the wrists are in line with the shoulder and we're not moving our hands out too wide. That's still part of stacking. A lot of times people get thrown off because since our fingertips are spread wide and we're pressing through them, if you watch the first video, they think that their hands are a lot closer together than they actually are. So when you're going to make sure that your wrists are in line with your shoulders, don't worry about the fingertips, but look at the wrists. So here, I have huge hands, so when I'm looking at my hands and my fingers are spread wide, it looks like my hands are right next to each other. But if I just pay attention to my wrists, I can see that they're right underneath of my shoulders. I'll turn this way so you can see a little bit better. So if you're just looking at my fingertips and hands, it looks like they're right next to each other. But then when you look in at the wrist, you're like, oh, that's actually what stacked looks like. That'll help you in a lot of poses, even in tabletop on your hands and knees. Focus on as wide as the shoulders within the frame of your body and having this in one line. Trying to make as many angles and as many straight lines as you can in poses are going to help your muscles to be able to work better and to let your bones help you out. I mean, they're there for a reason. They're very strong. They're very supportive. And when we stack them in the right way, they're able to help support us in the best way possible. If you've ever done acro yoga, bone stacking is a huge part of that as well. Because when you're a base in acro yoga, when you have your legs and bones stacked in your legs and in your arms, that's how you're able to flip people around and hold up another person because you're stacked and you're letting gravity and your bones and skeleton help you out instead of trying to make one joint do all the work. So that's part 2, and then stay tuned for part 3.